Satan's hollow victory. What Satan did to Adam and Eve was very similar to what he had previously done to a large number of his fellow angelic creatures, that is, convince them of the desirability and advisability of rejecting God's authority. That such a course of action was tantamount to accepting his authority in place of God's was a fact lost on Adam and Eve, and possibly not completely comprehended by many of his angelic followers. But it was a fact certainly central to the devil's plan. Indeed, such is his typical modus operandi today. First pry the intended victims away from God and anything else good he or she may be holding on to, then they will follow the path of evil as a natural consequence of their rejection of the good. By the same means, then, that he used to gain control over a large part of the angels, that is, deception, Satan regained a measure of control over the earth he had once, temporarily, ruled. And the devil said to him, I will give you all this power and all their glory, for it has been surrendered to me, and so I can give it to whomever I please. Luke 4:6. The Greek verb paradidomi, surrender, in the passage quoted, means that Satan's reign over the earth was not wrested from God or awarded to the devil, but was rather relinquished by Adam, abandoned, abdicated, given over by default, or surrendered. The devil's policy of undermining God's authority, then corrupting others and thereby gaining control over them and all they possess, proved just as effective on Adam and Eve as it had on those angels who followed him in rebellion against God. As a result of the first man's dereliction of duty, the whole world now lies within the control of the evil one. 1 John 5:19. By listening to a creature instead of his creator, Romans 1:25, Adam forfeited a large measure of mankind's dominion over planet Earth. As they walked out of the garden, Adam and Eve were not only entering a world characterized by pain, toil, and ultimate physical death, but also a world where the devil's influence would be great and pervasive. This was no Eden, but a world where only the unseen protection of God would prevent them from being annihilated by the satanic forces swirling around them. A world where only the diligent seeking of God, in response to the consciousness of sin they now possessed from their knowledge of good and evil, would lead them away from the otherwise inevitable path of death. Satan had now brought man down to his level. Just as the devil and his followers were essentially on parole from death row, awaiting God's administration of the sentence of death already passed against them, so man finds himself under a similar stay of execution after the fall, albeit one limited by the relative shortness of human life. However, the devil was not allowed to gloat and enjoy his hollow victory for long. For, as had been the case in his earlier rebellion, he may have won a battle, but he lost the war. The immediate offer of a saviour, in the seed of the woman, his sacrifice adumbrated in the coats of skin, took Satan as completely by surprise as did the destruction and recreation of the earth. Once again, God in his omniscience had everything planned before the devil had even conceived his counterattack. Because they do not share the intellectual, temporal, and material limitations of mankind, the angelic creatures who followed Satan were not prone to have a change of heart, but rather were confirmed or hardened in their opposition to God by the time they rebelled. Man, on the other hand, born in relative ignorance and subject to severe temporal and material limitations, upon the realization of his mortality and sinfulness, has the potential of responding to God's redemptive offer of grace in Jesus Christ, our Saviour, who was given over for our transgressions, but raised for our justification. Romans 4:25. The final battle was now on in earnest. The devil instantly sized up the new situation. Without a concerted effort on his part, the generations of human beings to come would in large numbers turn to God and the promised Saviour. The last Adam, destined to restore what the first Adam had lost, would come to save them from their sins and wrest back the control of the world Satan had only so recently regained. The end of such a process could only be what the devil had feared from the unimpeded procreation of the first man and woman in paradise, the replacement of himself and his followers with a new race of obedient creatures, only now they would choose to follow God instead of choosing not to rebel against him. the re-establishment forever of God's rule over the earth, and the final execution of his sentence, the lake of fire for all eternity. All future Satanic strategy, therefore, would be designed to prevent these eventualities. In the next part of this series, we shall examine Satan's desperate counter-strategy, the world system established to blind the eyes of mankind and oppose to the utmost all those who would seek God's truth.